And good afternoon, and welcome back to Daring Live. It's Thursday, and I was just lamenting to young David Banjo that I feel like I haven't done this in like 6 months or something. It seems like a long time, but it was in fact only like 2 weeks ago.
Because you went out to Merlefest.
Yeah, I traveled, and it threw like a whole wrench into the works, and it feels like that was a while ago. But yes, you're right. We went to Merlefest, and it was fantastic. Firstly, fantastic to see everybody there that we haven't seen. Both new faces, familiar faces, old friends, good friends, new friends. It was really, really cool to catch up with everybody. And it's just I would say we're almost back to kind of some kind of normal. Dave, did you miss Merlefest this year?
Yeah, I missed it. It's kind of a usual thing, Merlefest and Jazz Fest at the end of April, beginning of May.
Yep. So instead, we have the NAMM show in a couple of weeks' time up in Los Angeles, and that's also throwing me off a little bit. But here we are, back on Daring Live, and one of the guys that we got a chance to hang with at Merlefest, where it only rained a single time. That was pretty good. Was young Trey Wellington, who's our guest today. Long-time Deering artist, receiving the 2019 IBMA Momentum Award for his work Cane Mill Road. He is also the communications manager over at Pinecone. He's a busy man. We're actually blessed to have him join us today, which is the eve of his album release, his much anticipated solo effort, Black Banjo, which I have a copy of here, which is an awesome
a hard copy.
Yeah, I'll get into that in just a minute when we bring in Trey in just a minute. But and today he's going to join us to talk about his inspiration behind the title and the album itself, and to discuss his own experiences as a black banjo player in bluegrass music. So it's going to be a really fun, interesting discussion, and I know one that's very close to his heart. So without further ado, bring him in, Mr. Trey Wellington.
Hey everybody, I'm super happy to be here.
Hey Trey.
Everybody's doing well out there.
We're doing great, and all the better for seeing you. I saw you like 2 weeks ago.
I know, it was great seeing y'all. It was so good catching up with the Deering family, and seeing everybody and getting to play some awesome banjos and just see some friends I haven't seen in a very long time. That was great at Merlefest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just commenting, you handed me this at Merlefest, and I have listened to it. But I'm going to confess, it took me a minute to figure out how I was going to listen to this because my computer doesn't have a CD drive. I don't have one at home. I was like, my car has one. That's the only place where I've got a CD drive right now. So I've given it several good listens on my way to work and back. So, and it's a really, really good album. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
We're going to get into that. But I think, first and foremost, Dave, what do you think? Should we get him to play a tune for us?
Yeah, definitely. Love to hear.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's do that first.
Cool. Yeah. This first one I want to play here is one that is not title track, but track 7 on the album. This one's called Unknown Days Waltz, and I'll try and give it a little shot here for you.
All right.
Cool.
All right, fantastic, Trace. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How'd you come up with that tune?
Yeah, so that was one. I'd actually heard something kind of like semi-similar to it in a rap song. Like I'd heard kind of that chord, like not the chord progression, but kind of the like back and forth between like a major and a minor chord that are
Uh-huh.
only a half step away. And so I'd kind of heard that from that, and I was kind of like thinking, oh, that's really cool, and I really like how that makes me feel, and how can I turn that into something on banjo? And so I was sitting around one day and trying to find like what key did I want this song to be in, and I hit a B flat note, and I was like, oh, that's the perfect key for me right there. And so I kind of started playing with this idea, and originally I was going to do something like, which I kind of liked, but it was like super dissonant and it was kind of weird. So I was like, oh, let's try it like with an A minor instead of like A major there. So, and I was like, oh, I actually really like that. Let's keep with that idea. So I just started playing with the melody a little bit and kind of slowly but surely came up with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
A real nice song. I really like that.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, I mean, thanks for joining us today,
Of
man.
course.
We've been talking about doing this for a while, and finally the
Yeah.
schedules met up pretty well, and it's timed really beautifully with the album as well. So, but I know you wanted to come in and talk about a few different things
Yeah.
today, and we've got about an hour or
Cool.
so. But I mean, just to get things started, the album's Black Banjo.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously has some meaning behind the name. So let's start there. Like, how did you come up with? What was the inspiration behind kind of the name for the album?
Yeah, so definitely, it was one of those things when I was trying to think about naming an album. I was trying to think of things that were really important to me throughout the pandemic. It was kind of my album coming out of this time that was super weird for everybody, and a lot of the things we saw in the world going on during this time. And so when I was trying to come up with this album name, I was like, oh, let's think of a couple different options here. And I had probably like 3 or 4 different names that were on the thing. And Black Banjo was one of them, and it just kept sticking out to me. And something I really noticed over the pandemic, with there being a lot of efforts and changes in the social aspect of the world, a big thing I noticed was more trying to. I was getting a lot of messages from people being like, Trey, during this time, you should really try to connect with your roots and play this style of music or play this style of music because this is kind of what like is authentic to the like black banjo and sound. And I was like, like that's not really what I do though. Like the traditional sound of black banjo is not at all what I do. I love the sound of it, and I totally like 100% respect that sound because it's awesome. But at the same time, it's not what I do, and it's not what I'm really influenced heavily by. I do like the sound, like I said, so obviously I might take elements from it if I see fit. But overall, yeah, I'm not very um, like super influenced by it, and like my influences are listening to like jazz and R&B and rap, if I'm talking about outside of bluegrass influences. So I kind of wanted to break this stigma of that I have to do this one thing and kind of break down those barriers because I think a lot of the time people do get put in these sections when it comes to music, and nobody should ever be bound by like a specific genre or anything. And that's something I definitely have felt as a black banjo player in this world, is just people wanting to constrict me to these kind of to these genres and these bounds, and I'm not big on that.
Yeah, I mean that's. Yeah, I mean, how important it is as an artist to kind of not be constricted by what you think people, either people are gonna think people are either gonna like, or people that
Yeah.
just tell you, you should be doing this for XYZ reason.
Yeah. It was something that used to bother me a lot. Like people would say, kind of get on to me about, like, oh, you should play this way, or you should play this way. You should play more like this when you play. And after a while, I believe that criticism is helpful. And I think it's like a really good thing to listen to certain criticisms. But I also think you have to be decisive with your criticism because, everybody's going to have different opinions of what your playing's like, or things like that. So when you're looking at criticism, don't throw it out. Like, don't be like, oh, it's just like, that's not for me. Like, I would take it in and see if that's something that could help what the sound you're wanting at the end of the day. A lot is, like, if I was playing a bunch of melodic stuff and I was wanting to be a straight ahead banjo player, and somebody came up and they're like, hey, maybe you should try practicing and playing more Scruggs style in your breaks. Maybe that's like a good point, if I'm wanting to be a straight ahead banjo player. But if I'm wanting to go and do my own thing, then maybe it's not for me. And that's okay, because music's just an opinion at the end of the day. And so with all of this, I think, when you look at the innovators of a music and people that are coming up with their own style, everybody has had to push that bound of what is conventional within either their instrument, their genre, what they wear,
Yeah. It is hard to figure out, like, when you're trying to find your own voice, like how much is your own voice, how much is in your own voice, and how much, traditional other repertoire, no matter what genre of music it is, should you kind of be taking more influences from, how much is it kind of just laziness of you doing that and not learning other stuff. So it's just, how do you kind of balance that out and make those artistic decisions, I guess?
Yeah, starting out, like, I started out playing bluegrass music. That was one of the first musics I played on banjo, especially. I did a little of electric guitar where I did some heavy metal stuff, but we're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into that era of my life. We're just going to leave that one in the back burner. No, but I really do love that stuff still. But we don't need to talk about that. We're here to talk about banjo. But starting out in bluegrass, when you jam in a bluegrass setting, there's going to be tunes that like everybody's going to want to. That's one of the awesome things about bluegrass, old time, and like roots music is that there is these core tunes that everybody can get together, and a lot of people know them, and y'all can play, and there's this commonality and like fellowship in that, and that's one of the really awesome things about this music and a lot of musics and. So yeah, when you're first learning out, you should go and learn as much as you can from other people, because at the end of the day, hearing other people, if you can find yourself to what just what's around you, and you don't go out and search for like other things, you're never going to really learn a music. And it's all about, with every kind of musical style, you're learning a vocabulary. And like whether you're playing bluegrass, jazz, classical, you're still learning this vocabulary. You're learning. It's just like speaking. I heard Bela Fleck talk about this. Like when you're first, like, this is kind of going a little off topic, kind of on topic, but it kind of goes with genres too. Like bluegrass might be your English, and then you go and learn jazz. That's going to be your French, and then you go to classical. That's going to be your Spanish, and music as a universal language is in that way. You got to learn the vocabulary, and so by the way doing that is you learn the traditional tunes and kind of like quintessential tunes there. Right,
yeah. Well, going back into the topic of your banjo of your album, sorry. There's through the history of bluegrass, there's kind of been a pretty glaring lack of diversity in the history of bluegrass, but it's changing, thankfully, in recent years. And what has been your experience as a person of color that's playing the banjo in bluegrass banjo?
Yeah, it's kind of been a mixed thing, because you go certain places, you don't hear anything, and then you go other places and you do hear little snide comments. Like I remember one of the early ones, and like this came out of a good place with a lot of people, I feel like, but it was a weird thing to say, and the only reason they were saying it is because I was a black musician. But people would come up to me, they'd see me play, and they'd be like, "Hey, the banjo came from Africa, right?" I'd be like, yeah, like I've heard that, and it was just like a super weird thing to say. And at the time, when I was first starting to play, I didn't think too much of it because I was 14 years old. But looking back, you think a lot more on those moments and think about how weirdly rooted that is, honestly. And so definitely like things like that. A lot of these like kind of statements with people trying to, it comes from a good place, but it's also a just a strange thing to say. And that's something that I've definitely experienced a lot in bluegrass, as well as some just kind of overtly when I was in college, being around a bunch of college kids, I heard some things like very racist remarks there from people, and that was like another eye-opening moment for me, that I was like, oh, bluegrass really, like, there's not many people of color in this music, especially early in college. I discovered that pretty early on.
Right.
But I've also, it's not always, always bad, within, the realms of bluegrass, old time, and roots music, you do find community, though, with people, other people of color, or in general, and, it's really nice to get to see them, like, when I go to these festivals or like conventions or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've spoken about this a little bit over the years, but more recently, kind of in the build up to this episode, and I remember you kind of commenting on what you're describing, where people, you had some comments of people kind of saying like you should be playing a certain style of banjo, right?
Yeah.
More kind of geared towards the kind of that I'll call Mitchell style, I guess, and that kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
not necessarily bluegrass thing. And your response to me in that conversation was very much, I'm an American first, and I want to play bluegrass banjo. This is my thing. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit and kind of
Yeah.
expand? Like, how do you see yourself? You're a fantastic player. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, I don't want to just play bluegrass. That's like a, one of those things. Like, I play all kinds of music. Like, I do play bluegrass. That's where my home base is. That's where I started. I'll play old time. I play R&B. I play jazz. I play blues. I play all kinds of stuff all over the field. Right now, I'm touring with, like my band, Wellington band, is primarily a progressive bluegrass band, but that's not all I do either. And, it's one of those things, like, when kind of like dealing with that kind of stigma, like, oh, you should play this style of music, I just kind of look at it as like, I'm going to do me, and anybody that doesn't like that, I'm sorry. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't mean that in any kind of way like I shrug people's off, because I do want to hear people's opinions, what they think of my music, because it's a very important part of growing. And I want to know if everybody hates my music too.
I doubt it. I doubt it very much. I mean, Dave, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off though.
No. Okay.
So I was just going to say, I remember like one of the first times I met you in person was at IBMA, I think, 2018 maybe, something like that. And I was in one of the conferences, and Kathy Fink, good friend of yours, stood up and kind of, was in front of the board and just kind of made a really good kind of point about one of the things that should be focused on. It was more of a general kind of making bluegrass in particular at that time, just more accepting to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Different races, different genders, different members of different members of society in general.
Yeah.
What improvements do you see have been made over since you've been doing this? It sounds like you've been doing this for quite a long time already, since you were kind of 13, 14. But what changes do you kind of see in that short journey so far?
Yeah, there's definitely certain things that are getting better. I do see more effort in trying to, obviously make it a more inclusive place. But at the same time, you do see these things getting better. But at the same time, a lot of the time, it's meant in a good way, but it doesn't actually. The execution is not as good.
The intention is there, but the actual follow through maybe not.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like I remember this show that happened probably about a year and a half ago. I'm not going to mention anybody's name or anything like that. But it was one of those things that I was, booked for a show, and I was really excited to do it. And then, when they started marketing it, they marketed it as a special Juneteenth performance by Wellington. And, it was like one of those things. I feel like it was probably well intentioned, but it was such a cringy thing to do. And it was super, super, super weird. And in that same vein, kind of like talking about the promoter side of things, a lot of the time with promoters, they are trying to increase diversity at festivals, but they don't go out of their bubble. They hear about one person, and then they'll book like one person of color or like like diverse person at their festival, and then that's all they do, and then the rest of them are all white bands, and when you see that, it's kind of like they're, I guess they booked this one person, but and like good for that one person, they get the another show on the books for them. But at the same time, in that same vein, if we are going to try and make a valiant effort, make an effort that's like hiring multiple people of color, because just choosing one person to be like your show person for diversity is not helping anything. It's just
I think you can probably apply that to a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily music, but
yeah, it's not just music. No, it's definitely worldwide and business wide.
yeah. Dave.
So getting into just your when you've had self-doubts about your music that you've played as you're growing as an artist, how have you gotten past that and continued to grow? Because we all kind of have these moments where like, do I suck? Am I just like totally going down the wrong path, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. I have those all the time. Self-doubt is, something that a lot of people struggle with, and I'm one of them. I think at the end of the day, you look at your vision of who you want to be as an artist at the time. And visions are for changing. Many artists, have been playing like this, and then they'll go way off the other end and be like a completely different artist. And I think it's one of those things you just have to decide what is your musical vision and evaluate for yourself. And it's one of the, like, if you're like, okay, I want to be this super flashy player, I want to know all these hot licks, do all this, you need to go practice that. Then if you're not if you don't feel, you should always practice,
Right.
but at the same time, if you're not at that level to where you want to be at, you need to go practice and just try and like listen to the players you really like and listen to influences you really like and try and put that stuff on banjo, and then just keep playing it and keep playing it until you feel like you're at the level you want to be. And you can always push past your like where the level you want to be, but just starting out, have that goal of like, I want to be here, and make short strides for yourself as well. Like, don't just like expect yourself. Like, I know a lot of players that get frustrated because they'll be like, I want to be the super flashy melodic player, or like something, or they'll like be like, I want to play this kind of style of music, and they'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm not getting it, it's not for me. And it's like, no, you just like, you're playing 2 or 3 weeks on this stuff. Like, it might take you 6 months to even get it remotely nailed. So it's just like, don't give up on yourself. Just keep on trying.
And what do you suggest if your goals are above where you're at the time, and you're performing or have a recording date or something? How do you dial it back to a place where you can actually make those licks, but not water it down too much, so it's just kind of like watered down simple music?
At that point, especially if you're like getting ready for a recording session, it's playing to your strengths and not playing to your weaknesses. So like, a recording's forever, and like whatever you play on a recording, you can play anything on a recording. If you have the time and money, you can do about anything on a recording. But
it'll be expensive though.
It'll be expensive. Yeah, you're gonna run up a bill, but if you have the time and money, you can do that. But if you're especially if you're on a limited basis, I would definitely, before you go into the studio, sometimes you don't know when you go into the studio what you're playing either, especially if you're like a studio musician. But let's say your band's going in the studio though, and you have all the stuff, just arrange, if you're not confident on some of the material you're playing, arrange like what you're going to do on the record and beforehand. And just really work out, like what are your backup, like what are your like fancy licks going to be? Where are you going to do this? Are you going to do any fancy licks on this song? Just to make those decisions ahead of time, just so when you get into the studio, you're just kind of in a productive way. And if you can't get a lick, it's not the end of the world. Even though it's going on a recording, it's better to play what you're going to pull off and nail rather than something that at that time you might not be able to get, and it just takes time.
Well, do you want to play something else for us right now?
Yeah, yeah. I'll
do
kind of
it.
do like I'll do a more up tempo song. I actually do the song Pond Mountain Breakaway. I don't know what track this is on the album.
That is track 10 on the
Track
album.
10. Sweet.
I'm on it. I got it.
I need my copy. Where's my copy?
You gave it to me, and that's why I have it.
I had my one copy and I gave it to you, Jay.
Hey, I'll let you know. I was at the Deering residence yesterday, briefly, and this was sitting right next to their hi-fi system, so they've been playing it at home as
cool.
well. So there you go.
Awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, I'll play this one. This is Pond Mountain Breakaway.
That's
Muted. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
So how'd you come up with that tune?
That was one. I actually came up with an electric guitar riff for that one. I play a little bit of electric guitar, and I was actually coming up with like something for like an electric recording, and I was like, and like I was like, I ain't gonna try. It was more like I guess like. Like it was like that on guitar though,
Right.
And so I was coming up with that, and it was kind of like another thing. Like I was like, how do I make this into like a? Because I just don't want to do because that's not cool. Like the it's kind of cool, but we'll come back. But I was like, I wanted to make it more interesting. I wanted to make it more of like a musical thing that wasn't just going back and playing chords on repeat
Right.
like that and doing that. So I was like, how do I make this interesting? So I just started, thinking of like, okay, here's a D minor, here's a D minor, here's a D minor, there's a D minor, and I was like, okay, how do I want this to go? And then I was like, da 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 da. So I was like, oh, it kind of moves down like that, so that's perfect. So, and at first I didn't even do that roll. I remember I just did like. And so then I was like, okay, let's add in some rolls in here. So I was like trying to think. I was like, okay, what would be cool? And I just, went back to the basics and stuck to the Foggy Mountain roll there. And then I interjected that little like just forward roll right there in the middle. So.
Mm-hmm.
Which ended up kind of being pretty cool. And then I was like, okay, where do I go? I got this part now. And where do I go from here? And, I wanted something that was kind of like a fast-paced one for the album. That was just kind of like a bluegrass, like a new grass kind of thing. And so then I was like, let's go C. And then I kind of, just went with the mold, G. D and then back to G, and then then I wanted to make the B part super cool, something that wasn't like standard either, and so I kind of was like I was listening to like a song that maybe had something similar going on with that, and I was like, oh, let's use that little portion, and then. And I was like, okay, now how do I make this like not just like back and forth between these chords and actually have some kind of meaningful outro? And so like I hit the G, and then I was like, okay, where do I go from here? Then I was like just messing around on the neck, and I came up, hit this E minor, and then the B minor. So I was like, and then kind of thought back to that first rhythm, you know, the. So it was like, and then it ended up just on an F, and that was kind of all accidental. I was hearing it in my head, but a lot of it was accidental, and then kind of coming out, and I was like, okay, let's get back into kind of this bluegrass vibe. And so it was like, the lick I played there was, and then just going back, and then I came up with that other little kind of interlude section. I just wanted to like have something that like, I think on the album, the way we arranged this, we have like banjo solo, and then there's like a fiddle or I can't remember, fiddle or mandolin solo after the banjo. And then I was like, okay, I want to throw somebody, like I don't want them to think I'm just taking another banjo break. And so
right.
I just I was like messing around with some of these kind of like, but I did want them to fit over those chords at first, so and then I was like, let's throw something really weird in there. So like after I was kind of like, I was trying to throw that little diminished chord in there, and then I decided like after that I was like, oh, I got my one weird thing. Let's get back into the melody, and so I had this little chromatic like. And then, of course, I was like, okay, well, now it's been normal too long. Let's make it weird again. And then I went into this kind of, I used the tritone there and did an A flat in substitution of the D that would be in that place usually, and played this little like, and then kind of got back into my C from there. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. For me, it does. It's kind of on coming up with. It kind of shows a good outline of making a, kind of a newgrass breakdown sort of tune like that.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of, it's arpeggiating. Breakdown tunes are kind of a mixture of licks and arpeggiating chords, essentially. Yeah. And they aren't strongly melodic a lot of the time. But then, you see, you kind of it looks like you had your spots where you want to make it a little different, so you might do a different chord change or a different lick to, like a little melodic lick to run into each other. Would that be like a good framework, you would say, basically?
Yeah, that's a great framework. And I also think for me, like one thing, a theme of this album across all the writing on it was I was trying to think, like where can I like, because it's like you think of the great like written pieces in the world, like when you go back to like you think classical and jazz music, and a lot of those compositions there, a lot of them have those kind of like interlude section kind of things where they go kind of off the like what's going on there. And I think that's a really good outline when thinking of like writing tunes too, even if they're like a traditional tune, and you're playing it. I don't know, like why not have a little weird section in there to kind of like take a break from that kind of melody, because then when you get back into the melody, it's not like people are like, oh my gosh, I've heard this melody now for 4 times in a row. Right. Like, it's like, oh no, like they're actually getting like a little refreshing, like new thing in the middle of a song, and then, oh, let's get back into the tune again, and then they're not as uninterested when that gets back in.
Yeah.
And those are the things that keep listeners on their toes, right? And just
exactly.
Just kind of keeps it a little unpredictable.
Yeah, somebody who's really good at that, I think, like you listen to Bela Fleck, Jens Kruger, Tony Trischka, you listen to those guys, they're really good at that with their writing.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Banjo especially.
Sorry, Dave, I was cutting you off there, sir.
Go ahead.
No, I was interested in listening to the album. I know you had Wayne Benson on there.
Yeah.
Playing mandolin. We work quite closely with Kristen.
Cool.
But he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great mandolin player.
How did it all come about? Like, was that you reaching out to all the musicians, and who did you have on the album to kind of to back it up and make you shine, man?
Yeah, I signed with Mountain Home Music Company over the pandemic, and for this album, we decided to kind of collaborate me with some of the Mountain Home artists there, and he was like, "Oh, do you know John Stick?" We were just kind of going through people we were trying to think of, and they didn't have to be Mountain Home artists, but we were just trying to think like, "Oh, who are some people that like would be really good on this?" And early on in the project, we had started these recordings like almost like a year and a half ago, I think, is when we recorded the first set of these tunes. And so, like at the time, I was like, oh yeah, John Stickley would be great. And then when I was thinking of mandolin, I was like, oh, Wayne Benson's on here, right? And they were like, yeah. I was like, oh, let's get Wayne. He's awesome. And then Kevin on bass, Kevin Kerberg, plays with Zoe and Cloyd. He's a great bass player, and I'd actually never met Kevin, but I was like, when I was like asking around about people who would be like really good, John was like, "Oh, have you like met Kevin Kerberg? He's with one of these bands, but he's he's an amazing bass player." And I was really happy with everything Kevin did on the album. And then there was the first set of fiddle players was Lindsey Pruitt and Carly Arrowwood, and they're both amazing fiddle players. And we got Carly on two of the original songs from the first session, and we got Lindsey on the other two songs. And then when we came back to re-record, we were trying to, John thought, oh yeah, it'd be a good idea to probably keep the same cast of people roughly. And I'd actually met Avery and at a couple festivals not too long before we started recording this, and got to play with him in a little bit. And I was like, hey, can we bring Avery Merritt? Because I just on the specific tunes, I loved Carly and Lindsey, and I was just thinking with the tunes, we had played like one of them with Avery while I was out at a festival, Winfield, Kansas, and he killed it. So I was like, oh, why don't we see if he can come in for the rest of these tunes? And so he came in. Avery plays with Sierra Hole's band full time, and so he came in and did that, and it was he killed it and knocked it out of the park. So that was the full cast. And then we got on one song we got Tim O'Brien to come in, and we did like a little duet on Wasted Time.
Wow. Did y'all do that live together, or did he do it? Did you send parts digitally?
Yeah, we sent parts in that one. We couldn't. There was a time we were trying to get together in the studio, and then I think like he had a show reschedule or something, and we ended up not being able to get together in studio. But we sent parts back and got all that done, and I was still really happy. I loved how it turned out.
Nice. When you're doing that sort of thing, when recording with separately, not in the same room, anything, and there's no drum track. How do you suggest doing? Did you do it all to a click and then?
Yeah, we did everything to a click. But with the exception of one tune, we did everything else to a click.
Cool. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier to go back and and layer things on top without the tempo slightly changing here and there.
And you got a live band out with you as well, right? So when you're playing at Melfest, talk to us a little bit about who's playing with you live.
Yeah, so it's a really great group. I love going out and playing with them, and they're the best people to work with. Nick Watson-Feld's on guitar. He's an amazing vocalist, songwriter, guitar player, all around great musician. He's got a lot of cool music he's going to come out with relatively soon. He's about to record an album of solo stuff, and it's going to be great. So I definitely recommend going and checking that out. Josiah Nelson, it plays mandolin, and he's a really great mandolin and fiddle player. He does a lot of really, really cool music on his own as well with his project, and he has some recordings out, and he's actually about to release a new one here in just a little bit, I think in June. So definitely go check that out as well. And then Caitlin Lowe plays bass, and she has done a lot of work with a lot of really great groups. Has got a lot of really cool stuff out there, and she's just about as solid of a bass player as you can get. Yeah, and we play
Cool.
mostly original. We write a lot of the material. We do some of my stuff. We do some of their stuff. So it's kind of like a mixed bag of stuff we like to do.
And you draw on influences from other genres.
Mm-hmm.
On this on this album, you have a Coltrane tune and a Roy Hargrove tune, and
Mm-hmm.
and then and do you ever want to record with, and this is that's typical string band instrumentation, do you ever want to
Yep.
record with other instruments other than
De-
the string band arrangement?
Definitely, it's in the ideas somewhere. I've actually recorded some. I've done 2 or 3 done where it's like more of a jazz setting with like drums, horns, and things like that. And I'm playing banjo and electric guitar on those. It's mostly centered around electric guitar, but yeah, like I plan to. I don't know if you can see this. I have this little electric banjo here, banjo Strat, and I plan to do some cool stuff with this in the near future. For sure.
Very cool. We'll keep an eye out for that, definitely.
Cool.
I want to see what that is. But we'll have to have a conversation after the show and kind of dig into what that is exactly.
This is a cool instrument. I got it not too long ago. It has become a favorite of mine besides this one and my other banjo. Well, favorite electric banjo because I only have one.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's totally fine. It was. We needed more electric banjo, I think, in the world.
Yeah,
Favorite
it's
Grease,
cool
I can
stuff.
tell.
Yeah, definitely.
You wrote most. No, I mean, obviously not all the tunes, but you wrote most of them, right? They're all
Yeah,
mostly originals.
I think I wrote like 7. I mean, no, 8 of the 11. If I'm not mistaken, I think I had 3 covers. 3 or I might have.
You should know. This is your album,
I
my
know.
friend.
I think I wrote. I know. I should know this. I'm really slacking here on the live. Yeah, I wrote 8 out of the 11. We're going to say that. I think I'm pretty firm in saying that.
And did you write the whole thing, or did you have any input from the musicians that you brought in to record on any of the parts, or was it kind of
No,
like all
me
kind of laid
and
out before?
yeah, it was mostly all laid out. Me and John Weisberger recorded it. Arranged it together.
Very good.
And yeah, so we just sat down and had some sessions, talked about it. I had a lot of the arrangements in my head already, and I just wrote those down. And then like John charted them out, and we just went in there in the studio and got them done.
I like it. You play a lot of jazz too. Do you ever mess with like tenor banjo? I know Dave's a 5 and he's a tenor banjo player as well for more jazz stuff. Do you ever mess with that at all?
Actually, it's kind of funny. At my work, there's some instruments that have been donated, and there was a tenor banjo I saw, and it's at the office right now. But yeah, like I'm gonna eventually, I've been so busy with this album and making sure I'm good with this stuff that. Oh, can y'all still see me and hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think Jamie might have froze up for a minute, but yeah, with tenor banjo though, yeah, I'm gonna definitely at some point dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, Jamie's frozen. Either that or he's
Yeah.
really still.
Yeah, I was wondering if I froze at first. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. If you gotta dive into the tenor banjo thing too.
Yeah.
It's fun. And do you play mandolin at all?
Yeah, I do play. Yeah, I've messed around with it. I'm not like a pro level mandolin player by any means, but I do mess.
But the
around with it
fifth
from time to
tuning, you could pick up and play some chords.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
cool.
sure.
I'm scrolling through the chat here, I know we had a couple questions in here.
Okay.
I think, let's see. Well, here's one right at the end here. Susan Seyfarth is saying tenor banjo, which tuning? Because there's the Irish tuning and there's the standard tuning, and then people do Chicago tuning and things like that.
Yeah, don't hold me on that one because I'm not a tenor banjo. I've not picked it. Like I said,
You
I've
haven't
not picked
picked
it up
it.
yet. Yeah,
Yeah, you haven't
I
tuned
am.
it.
I am not the person to ask. I don't want to tell anybody wrong.
Well, Susan, the standard tunings are in fifths. The standard tuning is C, G, D, A, C, the lowest string, up to A, the highest, and then the Irish style is 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 still in fifths, but it's G, D, A, E, the lowest string being a G, just like a mandolin, but an octave below. So someone else, I can't find the name yet, but she asked, how'd you get started playing banjo?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started playing banjo when I was around 13, 14 in that range. I had I was in this club in my middle school. Well, like I said, I'd played electric guitar, and in the area I grew up very near where Doc Watson was. And so the influence of Doc Watson's undeniable in that area. So like some of my friends at the time had started playing like flat picking guitar, and I'd heard some like Doc CDs. My grandpa had a huge selection of CDs, and Doc was one of the artists in there. And so when I heard that, I was like, "Whoa, what is this right here?" And so I originally, wanted to learn flat picking guitar, and so I went to this club and started trying to flat pick a little bit. And about 2 or 3 months into the class, I remember one day I was playing like a bad Johnny Cash cover on a desk and trying to sing. It was really. I'm sorry for anybody that was there. If anybody from there is on this chat, I'm sorry. And so so he pulled the teacher one day pulled out a banjo and started playing. It was a Gibson RB4. I remember that now, and he started playing Salt Creek, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Whoa, what is that? What is he doing?" And I remember just falling in love with the sound of it. And I went home, and my mom, I asked my mom for one for a couple weeks until she finally was like, "Okay, I'll get you one." And so, um, about 3 months later, we got one from a pawn shop in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, actually. And I finally got to start playing banjo, and I was just a cheap banjo, no tone ring, just no back. Well, it had a back, but it was like held on by 4 screws. But hey, I am so thankful I was able to get that instrument.
Yeah. And how'd you keep going? Like, what kept you to keep going and going down the path and getting deeper into it all the time?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was really goal driven. So like, if I put my mind to something, I could get it done. Um, that was one of my like as far as getting like continuing something. And around the time I got my first banjo, everybody was like, "Oh, Trey, you don't need to play banjo, you're not going to play banjo, it's just going to be a summer thing or something." And I was like, you know what, I take that as a challenge. And so I just started. I asked the teacher at the end of the class when we were done, "Hey, who's a teacher local? Like, do you give lessons?" And he said, "Oh, I don't really give lessons, but this guy who taught me gives lessons. You should give him a call." And so his name was Eric Harden, and I gave him some calls, and he finally picked up for me, and he was like, "Oh, hey," I was like, "Yeah, I was like wondering about getting lessons." And he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "You free this time?" So I convinced my grandpa to help me pay for lessons, my first couple, until I got used to it. And so we started going up to lessons, and he started me out on a bunch of the Scruggs style stuff. And I was listening to a lot of banjo at that time. Wasn't practicing like I should have early on until I was like 15. Like, I'd been playing for a year, and then that's really my practice really picked up a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are some of your future goals at being a banjoist, professional banjoist?
Yeah.
What do you really want to do, say, be accomplished 5 years from now, whatever, or looking
Yeah.
back 5, 10 years from now, and you'd be like, yeah, I nailed it.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned you are kind of goal driven too.
Yeah, I really want my music to touch people. That's overall like the main thing. And without trying to sound cliche, kind of push the push the envelope on banjo and really get my own sound on it, get my own style is really what I'm hoping. Like, I want people to be able to listen and know it's me, and like
Right.
the music and be touched by the music I play. So that's like a really big thing for me. In the next, 5 years, I hope it happens before 5 years, but if I had to set that goal, that would be definitely one of them. And continuing to push my own comfort zone and put banjo in situations maybe it's not been very often, um, and do my own thing with it. That's my main goal.
Cool. And who are some musicians that some banjoists that you think have really achieved that 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 really sounding just like themselves? Because you just really clearly sounded and did something different. There's Bela Fleck, obviously,
Yeah.
and but who else are a few that have really you can just hear a few notes and you know exactly who they are, who it is playing.
Yeah, John Hartford is one of the first people to come to mind, right off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I think John Hartford. I think he really has his own thing going. He had his own style completely. And like when I hear John Hartford come on, like automatically I'm like, oh, that's John Hartford, like
yeah,
without a
yeah,
second thought on. And I think he's really achieved that. There's a number of players who have really came a long way and done that. Tony Furtado is another one right off the top of my head. I think like as
hmm,
soon as I hear Tony's music, I was super into it. I know it's him. Right off the top of my head. I think Scott Vestal is one I know right off the top of my head. Every time I
yeah,
hear him, I think Jens is one. I think Jens has his own completely unique touch on it.
definitely,
Um, um, yeah, right off the top of my head, those are like some of the ones that are
yeah,
really sticking out. I'm like, oh, I know that's them right as soon as I hear them.
yeah. It's a great goal. It's because so many banjo players just want to sound like other banjo players, and so it's great to hear that you're really striving to get your own sound.
It's a very important thing to me.
Cool. Well, Trey, we're looking forward to your album release tomorrow. Everybody, you can get it
Yeah,
on all the streaming platforms, right? And
yeah.
anywhere else, the Bandcamp or anything like that too.
Yeah, you can go to Bandcamp, TreyWellington.com. You can order and I'll send you one. And if you want it signed, you can get a limited edition signed one.
Wow,
Um,
there you
if you
go.
really, if that's what you want, if you want me to break that pretty packaging and put my bad signature on there, I will do it.
All right. Well, you better get a new pen going because you might have to sign quite a few.
I hope so.
Well, thanks for being on. It's great having you
Yeah.
on again. And do you want to play us out with another tune?
Yeah, sure. I was trying to think of another one off the album to do. I'm gonna do that one we were kind of talking about Naima. I've done two originals, so I'll do one of the covers I did. So
But before you play Naima, you put lyrics on top of it. I was curious about that. How'd you come? What kind of inspired you to put lyrics on there?
yeah, so I got into writing a bunch of poetry over the pandemic, and so that was like one of the things I'd written that like one of Coltrane's things was like with a bunch of like when there was a lot of change in the world, he would write music to inflict with that. And so
Hmm.
when I was doing this song, with that theme in mind of like what Coltrane's music was really about, like I was like, okay, this is something like I feel like is really meaningful right now. And to
Right.
me, and like that poem was, and even though it was like very short, it was like a little 10-second clip. I thought it added like a new layer for me to that song.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, love to hear it.
Cool.